Welcome to the Conscious Living Podcast, conversations to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. An uplifting and inspiring series of conversations and talks with your host, Jackie Woodside. We are educating minds, empowering lives, and enlightening souls to create a world where love prevails. In this engaging podcast, we deliver exciting, positive, transformative talks and teachings designed to elevate your life. Now, let's join our host, Jackie Woodside, for this week's session.
Hi, everybody. Jackie Woodside here with another exciting episode of the Conscious Living Podcast, where we are here to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. Thank you for being one of the people that cares enough about our world that you want to spend your time with me, thinking deeply about what it means to live your life more consciously. Today, I'm really excited to bring together a very unique entrepreneur and successful coach who thinks deeply about what it means to live consciously in relationship, and particularly to live consciously as women. So I want to introduce to the Conscious Living Podcast today, Terri Britt, who is an multi-award-winning author, a TEDx speaker, and she also does personal development coaching, spiritual coaching, most particularly for women around the issues of worthiness, believing in ourselves, and owning and claiming our power and worth. Terri Britt, welcome to the Conscious Living Podcast.
Thank you so much. And I have to tell you, I'm just sitting here reading your tagline, educate, empower, enlighten. I love that. And I feel like this is what we're here to do, right? You as a teacher and a voice, me and all of us who are working together. So I'm like, hey, I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you so much. I love this podcast. I love the people that I get to meet and the projects that kind of spill out from the relationships I develop on this podcast. Every single person that comes here has such a unique view on this notion of what does it mean to live life consciously. You know, I've had 40, 50 some conversations on this topic, two Conscious Living Summit, Money Vibe Summit, Conscious Living Podcast. And all I keep talking to people about is drilling down this notion of, are we living consciously, and what does that really mean? And I'm so excited by the things that you have shared with me about about your work, yes, but more so, Terri, about the way that you think about empowerment, educating, empowering, enlightening our world in terms of women. So let's just turn it over to you. You can say a few more things about yourself to help our audience get to know you a bit more.
Well, the biggest thing is that I love family. And I think family is so key to who we are, whether it's good stuff that we brought in from our childhoods or bad stuff. I mean, because we all have that programming, right? So I'm really on a mission to break the generational cycle of lack, stress, and struggle, to help women get off of the hamster wheel so that they thrive and become these women leaders of love, which is my community, women leaders of love for their families. And what I mean by that is that they are truly coming from their heart space. We're getting out of our heads, which our heads are great, right? I mean, we have to have both.
Sure.
But to really come from that deep sense of source inside of us, that we're leading from there. I love it because I didn't used to do that. I used to be that total left brain head person, straight A student, try to do everything right, trying to get it right. And I was miserable. I found myself just absolutely miserable. And when I became a wife and mom, I was trying to be the best that I could, always overanalyzing, always trying to get it right. And I had so much guilt and shame. I couldn't stand myself. I mean, I'd be that happy-faced mom and trying to get everything right, and then I would blow up and be sad and guilty.
Wait, and shame about what, Terri?
I felt when I was controlling with my kids, when I blamed my husband for my unhappiness, when I felt like maybe I had not done it good enough with my family, that I was possibly going to cause my family pain because I was carrying a lot of inner pain. And so I would feel like I was perpetuating the cycle. And in essence, I was. My first husband, who I was with for 17 years, and then he died. when I came into his life, he had a little boy who's now almost 40. So this has been many years ago.
Wow.
Right? Okay. So AJ was about 4.5, almost 5. And I found myself trying to make him be good, preparing him for the future, which is what we do as parents, right? We think if I get you, get you to be good, do it right, be the best, then you're going to have the best chance at happiness and success. Well, I can tell you years later, AJ said one day we were having dinner when Steve was still alive. I've now been married to my hubby, Charlie, for 15 years almost. So this is a long time. But we were talking and AJ made a statement about when I was bad as a kid, and it literally sucked the air out of me.
Bro.
And I haven't talked about this. I don't think I've ever really talked about this in this conversation, but I went home and I was like, wow. He took on this belief that he was bad because I was trying to prepare him for the future.
Right.
Right?
Which is what we all do as parents out of our own anxiety.
Yeah, our own lack, our own feelings of unworthiness and not feeling loved. And it was a real eye-opener for me. It was a real eye-opener for me. It was like, oh my gosh, he was never bad. And I wrote him a letter and said, you were never bad. This was your dad's and my feelings of lack that we thought we were doing the loving thing. But thankfully, I became aware of it way before that conversation happened, way back when, because I watched my dad die, and he was 54. It died.
Wow.
Yeah, Daddy he was an alcoholic. He became an alcoholic because he'd lost everything in bankruptcy. And right before he died, and I talk about this in my TEDx, that I remember looking at him going, Daddy, you can't die. I love you. And literally his eyes bugged out at me as if he was in shock to know that I loved him. And I realized that he had no forgiveness of himself. He didn't feel worthy of receiving love because he had no forgiveness. And I got into therapy and realized I was just like him. I was like him and my mom. They both live from a space of a lack of self-forgiveness, a lack of self-love. And I had just learned that from them, right? This is what we do when we see our families, our parents deny themselves and try to do everything right for the kids and push and shove and then try to prepare their kids. The kids actually learn more from the parents' actions about themselves than they do from what the parents are doing for them. It was so funny because I've come to that realization over my own travels of this journey of conscious living and in coaching women for almost 25 years. But it was so funny because this happened just recently. I turned on Audible and I'm listening to Brene Brown's, one of her books, and she was talking about, studies or something that kids actually learn from the parents and how they treat themselves and their actions rather than what they do for the kids. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what I've been saying all along. It's not what we do for our families, but how we live our lives that impacts them the most, right? And so for me, my mission is to help women really own their worth, to treat themselves as if they matter, to clean up the subconscious beliefs that say, I can't receive for being me, or to, that receiving is bad, because we're taught so much that in the family, put yourself last, put everyone else first, that this is love. But it's not love when people are watching you and learning that you have to suffer to be loving. That's not love. That's punishment.
Right. Wow. My head is reeling. So you don't know this. I have a 17-year-old, soon to be 18-year-old son. So I'm hearing a lot of myself in what you were sharing.
Oh, wow. So what sticks out the most for you?
That sense of, I love that you said this, that so much of our energy is geared toward, quote, preparing them for a good future, setting them up for success, helping them learn what they need to know, rather than just being in their world and actually seeing them. I feel like a lot of my experience is I see him through through my eyes of his future. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I'm not seeing through his future. Yeah, I remember when my spouse and I were talking about what kind of a school he was going to go to, and then we had to change schools for various reasons. And, we kept saying we wanted to do what was best for him. And at some point, I just smiled and I said, we have no idea what's best for him. We're going to make our decision based on the best we can with the information that we have and our values. But there's no way that we can know what's best for him because we're not him. So I
Right.
think parents, we live in the divine paradox,
Yes, we do.
right? We live in this divine paradox of deeply caring and loving and wanting to do, quote, what's best for them, but never knowing what that is.
Right. Well, it's so interesting because on my journey, I got into studying intuition. After my dad died, my therapist said, you need to get into meditation. You're wound really tight. And I ended up at an energy school. And through several years of training there, and then, of course, more and more training through the years, I started using my intuition to look at my family's spirits to see what was best. And I'll give you an example. And this was so cool. My husband that died, he had prostate cancer, very advanced prostate cancer. It was where a man is supposed to have a PSA, which is the number they look to see how far it's gone. It's supposed to be between 1 and 4. He was at a 22. Not good.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
Not good. So, because I always feel like, well, let's see what we can clear up in the body. Let's see what the energy blocks are. But I looked at his spirit, and his spirit said, stay back. This is my journey.
Wow.
And then I had to ask him, how do I serve you? And it was just to hold the space for him to walk through this journey. And so we did. And what was so interesting is he ended up beating the cancer. He had a 2% chance of survival. He ended up beating the cancer. And then, so he got diagnosed. We had about 1.5 years of stuff that went on. And then we moved to Florida from California. And then 1.5 years later into Florida, he died of a heart attack. But I know it was so crazy. But what was so interesting was because I wasn't in the sense of I have to save him. Instead, I was in this space of I have to hold the vibration of love and joy and compassion for him as he walks through this. Wow. So it was interesting. You never knew he was sick. You couldn't even tell he was sick. It was so until he'd had some radiation, and then he had some symptoms from the radiation. But it was so beautiful because it was not my journey to save. It was my journey to love him as he walked his journey.
Right.
Right? And so I've done this through the years with my kids who've gone through their own stuff, and I've had to look at them because mama, we want to save them, right? When they're going through trying times. And luckily our kids are doing really, really well. But there have been times where it was, like this. And I've had to look at them and just go into my intuitive state, in that intuitive mindset and just really looking in and opening up to that higher consciousness and asking, what do you need from me right now? How can I best support you? And it's usually just love me. Wow. Stay back. Don't try to fix it. Just love me. And so what I've come to see, and the way I see conscious living, is by seeing everyone is this amazing spirit who is having a human experience, and that I can help them remember who they are as these amazing spirits. For me, we make up the body of God, of consciousness, right? We are all part of that. And so for me, when someone comes into my space that maybe triggers me in my subconscious mind, I'm like, thank you. Thank you for being the spirit that you are. And I didn't used to be. I used to be always ticked off. I mean, I used to beat up people, okay? This was way back at my teens and 20s. But now I can look at them and go, thank you for the gift. And really see them as an incredible opportunity to go deeper into loving myself, to connecting, to opening up to the divine in me and seeing more of the divine in people and living from that higher consciousness of intuition. I luckily, when I entered that energy school, it guided me eventually into an intuitive reading class, an intuitive healing class. So it was so much fun to be able to read people's energy and then see where if the way the teacher would say, you have matching pictures. Okay, you two go read each other, but she wouldn't tell you anything. And you would sit there and you'd be looking at their energy and they're just sitting there, and all of a sudden I'd go, whoa, I can't see anymore. Well, that was my clue, because I was being triggered and that I was no longer in neutrality. That was my clue that my matching picture, I'd finally found something, so that I would have to stop the reading, go within, look for my energy and say, where is this? And just, I don't remember how we did it exactly back then, because I do it a little differently now. But you'd find the picture or the memory or the belief, and then just say, okay, if this is causing me to react, if it's causing any kind of suffering, it's not the truth, because the truth is love. The truth is joy. The truth is beauty and compassion and kindness, right? So I'd move it out and then come back and be able to read neutrally, to be in that neutral state, because that's where we want to be, right, when we're reading someone. Sure. And by doing that, I realized that, wow, I'm living by all these beliefs that are not my truth. And then I started learning to do soul retrievals. What's my truth? What is my truth? And giving myself permission to stand in that. Well, the more I got into my truth, the more I trusted my intuition, and because I was no longer performing for the people around me. I was my side.
When you say into my truth, the more I got into my truth, what do you mean by that? How are you using that word, truth?
I look at my truth as how I was created, my true essence of my being. Like, I believe we are all divine. And I have days that I forget that I'm divine, and I have days that I forget other people are divine. But overall, I truly believe that we make up the body of God. Mm-hmm. And so for me, that truth is that. And so my truth is expressed in my own unique way. I spent years feeling like I was supposed to conform. I was supposed to perform to everybody else's truths, and then that's what made me unhappy. So my truth is when I look inside of myself and say, what brings me joy? What is it that rings true for me? Who am I? And not letting anyone else define that, but me inside of myself defining that.
Yeah, I love that. So basically what you're saying is your truth, how you discover your truth, is an inward journey.
Yeah.
Asking yourself, really profound questions like, who am I? And not what brings me joy, and I'm sure you're going to agree with this, but what blocks me from the joy that's always there.
Yeah, I love the way you said that. Yes, thank you.
Because it's always present, and the only thing that's in the way is our human experience, our interpretations, our ego, our defensiveness, our judgments, our comparisons.
Right.
That's what gets in the way of our joy. And when you're able to dissolve those perceptions into the sea of nothingness, to just dissolve them, then what's present is love, joy, connection, oneness, peace. It's
fulfillment.
That's
a big one for me, because I was always chasing after things for fulfillment. You know, the way that this all happened for me after I went through all the energy school is I read a book on unconditional love by Paul Ferrini. Beautiful book. And I think it's called Unconditional Love, The Reflections of the Christ Mind, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, and I think that's the tagline. But anyway, I'm meditating on unconditional love when all of a sudden little Terri, the 5-year-old inside of me, shows up. And I'm sobbing. I realize I have never acknowledged her. I've never even seen her. I've never loved her. I've always pushed her in the corner and treated her as if she didn't matter. And as I am having this experience, because I'm just watching her intuitively, I hear in my ear, get up and write this. This is the beginning of your book. And that was my first book message sent, which is really a journal. And I mean, at the end of it, I was like, okay, what am I doing with this? This is take the dates off and give each story a title. It's like a chicken soup for the soul. But what I was shown is that every time I reacted negatively to my kids, to my husband, to a friend, to something happening at my kid's school, whatever, just daily life in general, to see it as a gift to go within and talk to little Terri. So the way I would approach is I would look at her and say, I'm so sorry you're hurting. What is it that's hurting inside of you? What's causing you to suffer? And she would tell me what was hurting. I would allow my feelings to take me back, way back when, to whatever the original point was. And then I would say, well, what's the belief that you bought into?
Yeah. So important.
Right? And then I would release the belief, and then I would say, what is your truth? What is your truth? And by doing that, and then I would also ask, how can I love you? What do you need from me today to feel loved, nurtured, and supported? And so by doing that, I was owning my worth, because I am teaching her that she's worthy of being seen, heard, and valued. I stopped performing for everyone else. I even stopped performing for my family. I said, of course I was going to take care of my kids. And of course I'm going to be a wife to my husband. But instead of always feeling like I had to do it right, I did it from where I felt right for me. Right.
So
and
what you're doing, it's where you're doing it from.
Yeah. What's your perspective? Where are you coming from? Is your intention ego? Or is your intention? Because really, in reality, this is what I discovered about myself. When I was performing for my family, as much as I was trying to get it right and do it right, yes, I loved them. And yes, I wanted them to be happy. But at my core, my deepest desire was that I wanted them to love me in return. Right? And that's ego. That is complete ego. We want to be in a space of love where we can just love for the essence of love, right? That we're not needing other people to fill us up, because that's when we start controlling. That's when we start getting angry and blaming our kids or our husband or whoever it is. We blame them for our unhappiness. But as I started creating my own inner happiness, really finding and experiencing my truth and who I am, and finding that joy that was always in there, like you said so beautifully earlier, that joy that was already there, everything shifted in my family.
Really?
Oh my gosh, my husband and I quit fighting. We got our passion back. Our kids quit fighting. I mean, it was profound. And then to see my husband shift his life, because he watched me and he said, I don't want to be an achiever anymore. I want to be a seeker. I want to let everything go.
Nice.
Right? It was just beautiful to see the impact. And now Charlie, my husband now, he showed up on my doorstep the day after my husband Steve died. And I only knew Charlie from a distance. I know. I have been working on passion in my life and allowing myself to have more passion in my life. And I guess I shifted my vibration enough, because Steve died and Charlie showed up on my doorstep and said, let me support you through this. And I'm looking at him going, okay, I didn't know him. I mean, his daughter was on the dance team with my kids, but you may know this at being a mom, that you kind of hang out if you're doing things with your kids' friends' parents to do carpools and stuff.
Right.
And if the child is in between,
Yeah.
which his daughter was, I had never done it. I didn't know her or her friends or any of them. So I only knew him from a distance, and his wife had killed herself 5 years prior.
Oh. So he kind of knew that.
He knew.
Grief.
Yeah, he knew. So he said, let me support you through this. Well, a few weeks later, he shows up on his Harley, and I'm going, this is interesting.
Wow.
Passion was showing up.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing, Terri. Really were able to open yourself up to that passion and openness and just living hard.
Living from heart, totally. And what was so interesting is Charlie came from a lot of dysfunction, as I had. And when his wife killed herself, he tried to do everything for his daughter to overprotect her, and it was very dysfunctional. It was hard. It was really hard at first, but as I continued to try to teach him to love himself and to break that dysfunction, he began to thrive more and more in who he is. And I'll never forget, he said to me one day, he said he'd been pulling some oracle cards, and he kept getting soulmate. Well, it was bothering him, because you're my soulmate. Why am I pulling a soulmate card? So he luckily went and meditated on it. He comes down to me. I'm sitting on the couch in the living room. He comes down the steps from his upstairs office, and he's crying. His chin's quivering.
Oh,
And he said, I finally got it. I said, what? He said, well, I always knew that you loved me. He said, but until you taught me to love myself, I couldn't receive your love.
wow.
And now I do.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's powerful. That leads me to think about your current project. And I want to ask you a bit about it, the worthiness quotient. It's like Charlie had a breakthrough about his worthiness and loving himself.
Yeah.
So
You do.
yeah, so it sounds like you're really good at helping people see that. About the book that you're working on now, the worthiness quotient. I just find it such a brilliant concept, first of all, and congratulations for that.
Thank you.
But yeah, I'm curious. So say more about what you're teaching in that book.
Well, and I also already have the digital program, so I've been teaching the course for several years, and I've been allowing the information to come in. But the worthiness quotient was a download, and what it really means is how open are you to receiving love, support, nurturing, and guidance from the universe, from the people around you, simply for who you were created to be. That means no performing, no trying to get it right, because most of us think, I've owned my worth. I hear this constantly. Well, I've owned my worth. Okay, well, go take my worthiness quotient quiz, and I really want you to check this out after I've just listened to someone's story, because they feel like, well, I can't break through my glass ceilings at work, or my husband's not listening to me, or my kids, I don't feel respected. Well, that tells me those feelings that you're expressing means you haven't really owned your worth, and you deserve better than that. You deserve better than that. We can say it all day, but if we have subconscious beliefs that say, you're bad, you're not lovable, you're wrong for being who you are, then you are not owning your worth, and you're going to have a battle within yourself of what you can receive. You're going to be shut down. So when I look at our world and everybody's on a hamster wheel, it's because they don't have permission to receive. Now think about it. My late husband was a garment manufacturer when I met him. He made $1 million a year after taxes, bringing it home. We had a 50-foot yacht. We had sports cars, classic cars. We traveled. We did everything. But he was in poverty consciousness when I met him, because he was always pushing and shoving, and he did not trust that he was enough, that the universe would support him if he'd take a break,
Right.
if he would love himself, right? So even though he looked worthy, he didn't feel worthy from the core.
Yeah.
Right? So my goal is to help people really clean out the beliefs, like my digital program, and the book is all this stuff is percolating. I'm not sure what's exactly in the book yet, but I know it's everything I've learned through the years, but I couldn't tell you the chapter headings. I know it's called The Worthiness Quotient, Claim Your Crown, Lead a Life You Love. And the reason I talk about Claim Your Crown is because in 1982, I was Miss USA, and I talked about drinking.
Were you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I won on a whim. I went into Miss Arkansas, won on a whim, went to Miss USA 2 weeks later, because I was looking for a break to get out of Arkansas to go to Los Angeles, got in the top 12 and talked about drinking beer and dipping skull on the back of a pickup truck. That was my Arkansas girl talking like this.
Yeah.
And then I won. But in that moment of winning, of course, my ego was excited. And then the next moment, I felt empty. And I said, this is it. This is what I've been searching for all this time. I've been on this hamster wheel. I wasn't really thinking hamster wheel, but this is it. And then the next moment, I felt guilty because I was leaving my boyfriend behind, and I was about to be sent to New York. I talk about this in my TEDx. But I almost gave my crown back that night because I had no permission to receive.
Wow.
Yeah. And I had learned that in my family.
Yeah.
I had learned that in my family. So my goal is to break this generational cycle of stress, lack, and struggle, because as you and I both know, that when you find that connection within, then your heart opens up to the people around you. There's no more you against me. It's the we, right? And if we want to heal our planet and help our planet to evolve, we have to break that generational cycle. So that's what the worthiness quotient does. It helps people say, okay, where am I in lack? What beliefs am I holding on to? It helps you, the worthiness quotient helps you tap into your intuition and go deeper into that. So you start listening for that intuitive guidance. It's so fun. It was all divinely guided, and I'm on fire about it, as you could tell, because it's so cool.
I love it, Terri. It's such a unique perspective. And as you were talking, I was a therapist for 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've definitely done my, 10,000, if not 100,000 hours in the chair. Listen, and then I've been a coach for 30 years also. 20 of those overlapped. But, all I've done my whole career is listen to human beings talk about their inner world. That's really been my career. And as you were talking about that worthiness, that people can't receive, and that lack of self-love and the negative beliefs, it's like, that's the human condition.
It is.
I've worked with people who are millionaires and billionaires, as you were talking about with your former husband, all the externals, but that just desperate sense of lack of meaning or purpose or belonging or connection or happiness. I've had so many, mostly men, hire me in my coaching practice who say that, they've done all this, they have all that, and this is it. Like, there's gotta be something more.
Yeah.
And that's where my coaching begins, with a lot of people I know there's something more. I can't figure out how to access it. And that something more, to me, is a spiritual journey of, as you call, self-love, and I call being your God self on earth.
Yeah.
When you recognize that you are the divine, and you're here to express divinity through how you think, how you feel, and how you live your life. All of this, life takes on a whole different experience. Yeah. You might still even do the same things. You might run the same company, but it's not what you're doing, it's where you're doing it from.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. It's so funny because my husband now, we have this coffee company here in Georgia, and I had him listen to a meditation on poverty consciousness versus prosperity consciousness. And the poverty consciousness is when you're doing what you think you should be doing, which is survival. And prosperity is when you are honoring and loving who you are and what you feel and what's right for you. And he said, I'm in poverty consciousness. I said, why? He goes, I want wholesale business, but I don't want to go after it. I want to be home with you and the dogs. So he stopped. He stopped going after wholesale business. No guilt, no shame. Wholesale business starts flooding in. I mean, it was just pouring in. Now there was an opening, and his real dream had been to create an experience for people. And we only had one shop at that time. Next thing I know, like 2 months later, 3 months later, a property of 7.5 acres at the base of this mountain where it's just beautiful pastures and rolling hills. It came up for sale. We bought it. It became our tasting room, JumpinGoat Coffee Roasters and tasting room. And it exploded. I mean, it is just...
What's the name of it? I missed what you said.
It's JumpinGoat, one word, and there's only one G, because goats are who or what discovered coffee originally.
That's so cool.
And so
coffee roasters.
Yeah,
I go visit. That's awesome.
But it's so fun to see him because he's receiving, and he learned it from me. Both of my husbands and my children have watched that it is okay to receive by loving yourself, by being that expression of who you are. And it's so cool.
Terri, I love that. Let's affirm for our listeners, together that they too can open themselves to receive. Ask our listeners to just open their heart chakra and affirm with us. It is, I'm open to receive. I'm open to receive the goodness of life. And as I receive, so I give. And in fact, giving and receiving are the same thing because it comes from one source.
Yeah.
Just invite our listeners into that space that you've brought to us, Terri, that's been so profound. And I know people are going to want to find you and, hear about your coffee roaster place, but also we can work around the worthiness quotient. And your first, the award-winning book is The Enlightened Mom. Is that what?
Mom.
The Enlightened Mom?
So my My first book was Message Sent, which was my Journal of Awakening. And then there's The Enlightened Mom, which I was then guided to write. And then this next one I'm writing is The Worthiness Quotient. I've got my digital program, The Worthiness Quotient. I want to invite everybody to go take the quiz. It is really fun and eye-opening. It gets very broken down. So you'll see all the different areas. It's just terribritt.com/.
Okay. And
/quiz.
Quiz. Okay.
Quiz,
Awesome. So terribritt.com, folks, go check this woman out at a deeper level. Terri, thank you so much for being with us on the Conscious Living podcast and the way that you've raised our vibration and opened our hearts to the reality that we are here to be true to ourselves and receive. So thank you so, so much.
Thank you.